small cafe with large secrets. We're happy you came for a stop at the Solstice Cafe. I threw on my coat and walked out the door, locking it behind me. I walked down the street through the dark and cold night air, flowing freshly through my smoke-filled lungs. I avoided the various groups of violent folk stumbling out of the pubs and fighting with the other kids and adults looking for drugs to buy. I didn't much care about them. All I cared about was getting to the Solstice Cafe, the cafe in town that only opened at midnight and closed at 6 a.m. It was a small building on the corner of a street, with a road on one side and a river on the other. It was bathed in a halogen orange glow, which didn't do much to make it look brighter against the night sky. The dull orange gleamed on the black gloss of the walls and the front sign that simply read, the Solstice Cafe. I saw the white-yellow light of the cafe's interior through the window and walked towards a door where I happened upon a girl smoking on the front step. This was odd because, firstly, the cafe actually allowed people to smoke inside it, and secondly, because I had never seen another person in that cafe when I went there. I looked at her for a second or two before entering, but she didn't look up at me, so I just walked through the door and sat down at the booth on the far left side of the cafe. A waiter, the usual waiter, walked over to me and stood over me.
The usual?
Yeah. He then walked away to go make me a black coffee with 3 sugars. This is how interactions went at the cafe. I took a Marlboro Red out of the carton of my 20 Marlboro Reds, placed it between my lips and lit it with the metal Zippo lighter that I had owned since I first started smoking 5 years ago when I was 13. The smoke felt good in my lungs. Normal and comfortable, you know? The waiter brought my coffee over and placed it on the table in front of me. How much?
No charge.
I stopped for a second. No charge? The waiter pointed to a sign on the wall that simply read, "If you need it, it is free." And then he walked back to the counter where he sat silently. I alternated between draws of my cigarette and sips of my coffee, which felt nice and good even. But then again, I rarely ever felt good, so I wasn't really qualified to discuss how good felt. If I had to take a guess, though, I'd say it felt like good coffee, a good cigarette, and a nice cafe. I couldn't say much about the history of the Solstice Cafe because I don't think anyone knows anything about it. It just kind of popped up one day and there was, almost from out of nowhere, a fully stocked cafe with staff and the ability to not get closed down even when allowing smoking inside. However, I never really did care. The coffee was cheap and I could smoke indoors where it was warm, and that was good enough for me. The bell over the door rang, and in walked the girl from the step. She was shivering, and she looked tired, like she hadn't slept in a few weeks. Black bags under her eyes and an almost constant grumbly face. She walked in and sat in a booth a few booths away from me. The waiter brought her a plate of toast with some butter. I called the waiter over and grabbed my wallet. "Hey, could you bring me a menu?" He nodded and handed me a glossy menu that showed names and pictures of various meals, each as appetizing as the last. "I'll take the bacon burger," I said, pointing at the menu. "Oh, and could you do me a favour and tell that girl to pick something off the menu? Anything she wants is on me tonight." The waiter nodded and walked over to the girl, and the girl, smiling, pointed at the menu, and the waiter walked back to the kitchen. That was the one thing we did all know about the Solstice Cafe. If you went there, you looked after the other customers. There was an atmosphere that you rarely find in other places here. When you were in the cafe, you were only there because you needed to be for some reason. Insomnia, stress, depression. Whatever it was, you were only there because this was the only place you could go. So, since everyone needed to be there, everyone needed the rest of the people in the cafe too. The waiter brought me the burger and brought the girl a plate of, I think it was steak. I didn't even know that the place did steak, but Lord above, they brought her a place of steak. The burger was delicious, and from what I could see from the way the girl ate the steak, she probably found the steak delicious too. When the food was all done, I asked for another coffee and took out another smoke. As I sat and sipped and smoked, I began to sink and drift and tumble and fall into my mind and seat, but I was interrupted by the girl walking over and sitting down in front of me.
Who are you?
She asked. I was slightly taken back. "My name's Dean," I replied.
Okay, Dean, and why did you get me?
The way she took draws, I almost couldn't believe she'd never smoked. "You sure this is your first cigarette?"
Yeah, I swear to God.
I don't much believe in God.
Why not?
I ain't never seen any evidence of him.
Oh.
Okay, that's a lie. I've seen evidence of him, but only when I wake up when it's a sore ass. The girl laughed and smiled at me. What's your name anyway? I asked, taking a draw.
Oh, what?
Well, you know my name, but you never told me yours.
Oh, it's Sarah.
Ah, good to meet you, Sarah. The waiter walked over to us.
Excuse me,
He said.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to run out for a few seconds. Could I leave you two to hold the fort for a while?
Had this cafe not popped out of nowhere? Were this cafe not able to manage to stock itself entirely all the time? Were this cafe not able to survive while giving out tons of free food and drink and violate smoke laws? I might have found that odd. However, that was not the case. So I nodded. The waiter left and locked the door, and me and Sarah spoke about pancakes, I think, for a few minutes, when suddenly the power went out. Huh. Fuse must have gone. I'll go fix it, I said to the pitch black space where I figured Sarah was probably sitting. But I got no reply. Hey Sarah, you okay?
No.
She replied.
I'm scared of the dark.
I sighed. Alright, give me a sec and I'll go fix the fuse.
No, don't leave me, please.
Okay, I said, taking out my phone and locking it. Here. I put the phone on the table and I let Sarah use it as a light, while I, fumbling in the dark, grabbed the bag I had brought with me and reached in, pulling out a pack of crayons and placing a few of them in a cup and lighting the tips. Crayons burn for around half an hour, so we should be okay, I said, smiling. I could see, in the dim light of the burning crayon, that Sarah was visibly shaken up. Hey, I said, kinda hushed. It'll be okay. Then, as if God himself was trying to actively fuck with me, it began pouring down with rain and thunder and lightning. With every boom of thunder or crack of lightning, Sarah would flinch. Then, of course, a huge boom of thunder right above us, and Sarah shot under the table and huddled up. Anything I can do to help? I asked. She was too scared to answer, so I grabbed the crayon cup and I sat down, placing it in front of us as I sat and placed my arm around Sarah's shoulders. It'll be okay, I said while drawing lazy circles on her shoulder with my right hand. Do you like being read to? She nodded very slightly. Well, I'm a writer of sorts, so I'll grab my notebook and read something if you want. Again, she nodded slightly, and I'm aware it was because of fear, but when she nodded like that, I couldn't help noticing that it was really, really adorable. Alright, hands up, because this poem is shitty, and it's terrible, and I'm sorry, and it's called... Well, actually, I don't know what it's called, but I hope you like it. I cleared my throat. I started reading from the notepad that I pulled out of my bag while searching for the crayons. A warrior sat upon a cliff, looking over the sand and the sea. Looking through the very shadows of the void, he looked at the people walking across the land, kicking at the coast. They all walked oblivious of him and his wars. They saw not the lives around him, only the reflection, the walking reflection of themselves as they continued on into the evening. But suddenly, through the shadows, the evening sun dimmed and shone its last ray over a girl. The warrior paused as he stared. There was a cloud over her. The shadows he looked through were with her, as the shadows were to him. He leapt and ran across the world to her. He didn't understand why, but he felt the purpose called to him. The girl stared at him in confusion as he ran towards her. The warrior looked into her shadows and saw she was beautiful. She was a crack in light that the dawn would fall from just to grace the ground she'd walk upon. She, though, she could not see through her shadow. She could not see the dawn that she herself walked upon. She denied herself and thus denied perfection. She did not believe in herself, and so she did not believe in angels. She did not believe in her dawn, so she did not know that she was the light. She looked into the warrior's shadows, and she couldn't understand why he stared at her and not the darkness above him, when there were dragons and ghosts and demons. Yet he stared at her, and the warrior looked into her dawn, and the girl looked into his darkness, and somehow they both wished for the same thing, for the other to see their own dawn. personally, I thought, and to this day still think, that that poem I wrote was pretentious as all hell. But it said all I wanted to say about why I wrote it in the first place. Sarah had calmed down a little bit, but she was still shaking, so I gripped her tight and started singing. When I finished, she sighed and cuddled into me. I had to stop for a second. She was warm against my shoulder. She wrapped her arms around my ribs and squeezed tight at every clap of thunder, which kind of hurt, but I didn't mind. She smelled of coffee and cigarettes and strawberry wine, and she looked so beautiful in the dim light of the burning crayons. There were still bags under her eyes, of course, and her skin was still pale, but I couldn't help but find her beautiful in a way. I don't tell my story because I'm always scared people will be scared away by it.
Why?
She asked. My story consists of mainly pain and some adventure and being too nice.
Why would that scare people?
I don't know, it just usually does. She fidgeted and mumbled something that I couldn't hear, and just as I went to ask her what she said, the lights came back on, and the cafe door swung open and the waiter stepped inside.
Oh Lord, you should see the storm outside,
She announced at the cafe. Me and Sarah got up and out from under the table, and the waiter cocked his brow.
Oh, you two weren't,
Sarah blushed and I just started yelling, "Oh God, no, we were just cuddling,
What you
sweet,
said.
it's very sweet." The waiter furrowed his brow more. I mean, she was scared of the storm, so I did the cuddle.
You cuddled me, that's it.
It was just one of the cuddle,
Oh,
just
look
one
at
of the
you.
cuddle.
Yeah, say so.
The waiter winked and smiled at us, laughing at getting us so badly, and he went behind the counter. I, meanwhile, blew out the crayons, and isn't that weird in and of itself, and sat at the table. "Hey, Sarah," I said.
Yeah?
She replied, composing herself and somewhat embarrassed. "I hope you don't think this is weird, but I'd like to see you again."
Wait, what? Why?
I don't know if I'm writing my story, or if some force beyond my control is making me do and say these things. I doubt it, but either way, I have a story to live, and no matter who writes it, I'd like you to be a character in it. The waiter called out from behind the counter.
You know, he's kind of wordy, but you should maybe say yes.
Wait, why?
Sarah called out.
Guy says that on the spot, he's either a serial killer or romantic. Either way, it's gonna be an adventure hunt.
I began chuckling to myself, and Sarah just shook her head at the world, but eventually, after some blushing and me repeatedly going, "Please," she agreed to see me again the next Monday at the Solstice Cafe.
Well, thanks, but until then, thank you for tonight, but I really have to go.
"Why?" I asked.
I have things to do tomorrow, and I should really get home as soon as possible. Plus, it seems like the storm is going to die down. It always dying down.
Which it was, and it slowed to a slight drizzle or light breeze. I had no reason to keep it there. "Okay then," I said. I walked her to the door and she hugged me goodbye. I waved, saw her off, and walked back to my seat at the booth. It was around 1 a.m. at this point, and I still had about 5 hours to kill before the cafe shut.
More coffee, hun?
The waiter asked. "Yeah, sure, thanks,"
On the house.
he said. "But, I don't really need the coffee," I replied, confused.
No, hun, but you really need this cafe.
I guess I do.
Which means, soon enough, son, you're gonna have to make a choice.
There was a moment, and I looked into the waiter's eyes. It hit me. I knew what he meant. "I'll have that coffee and be off," I said. He brought me a coffee and sat down with me.
Let me tell you a story.
He said. An hour later, shocked, confused, and understanding things I shouldn't have understood, I learned the true nature of the Solstice Cafe. The Solstice Cafe, written by Adam, Logan, Dean Caulfeild, starring Adam, Logan, Dean Caulfeild, and Lynsey Coultas as Sarah, and Kristian Summerson as the waiter. The music was Mesmerize and Anamalie by Incompetech and MacLeod. Links to their website and the Creative Commons usage can be found in the description. Thank you for listening.